Okay, great opportunity comes from great change, and we are going through great change right now. We're going to move from this system that I'm showing on the screen right here to this beautiful new system, and I'm going to explain why. And this is all of our opportunity if you're paying attention. The old system, the gross domestic product, the GDP, the economy, had three influential factors. Talk to any economist, any analyst, this is what they'll always say, that you need labor growth to increase, you need productivity growth to increase, and ultimately that spurs on you capital growth, or said differently in a debt-based money system, it's new debt. So these three things you always want going up. But what has happened in the last few years is labor growth has declined and is declining in the Western world. Productivity growth is increasing so quickly that it's actually now a negative on GDP. It's actually a deflationary force. Economists are going to argue about this stuff all day long. But when you have productivity, for example, I know a friend who works in the software world that needed 4 guys to do a demo that they were creating that was going to take about 4 or 5 months. He can now do that demo with 1 guy and AI, and it'll take about, instead of 4 or 5 months, it takes about 4 days. So that is very deflationary for the economy. And as a result, the economy to grow, the only thing that the banks, the central banking system can make go up is the debt. So we can expect a lot more debt coming our way. And that's why you're going to hear about liquidity in 2026. It's why central bankers cut rates when people don't think they should cut rates. That's going to be the fuel to drive GDP. That's the old system. So what's unfolding right now is absolutely historic. It's probably the biggest and most profitable opportunity of our lifetime. I can't stop thinking about it and talking about it. It's huge. And we're in the middle of what I would refer to as an economic phase transition. This isn't just a small change. This is a big change. We're moving from one type of economic system to a completely new and different one. And a change like this is very turbulent. And what do I mean when I say an economic phase transition? We're changing the state from a primarily physical or analog economy to a primarily digital economy. So we're going from, making things in the real world as the main driving force of the economy to this digital economy being the main driving force of the economic activity in the world. Humans aren't good at spotting large transitions, and we cling to the old. And if you look at the history of the world when it comes to things like the reserve currencies, kind of like the base capital of the world, there's always been a change. So changes like this aren't new. And when you look at this image that we have up here, you can see Portugal was the world reserve currency for about 60 years. Then it was Spain and the Netherlands and France and Britain. And, the United States has been that now for the last, it'll be arguable. Some people say 50 years, some people say 80, depends on which meeting in the 1900s you thought was the meeting that really made the US dollar the reserve currency. But since 1913, when the US dollar came in its present form, it's been a major player, and that's the system we've all been running for that time now. So during this change, your choice of capital and where you save, so what you exchange your time and your energy for, and what capital you save that in, is going to very likely determine how well you navigate this change. And you can see some of this just showing up in the data right now. Like, nobody was talking about gold since at least, I believe, 2012. Gold had a bit of a run from 2008 to 2012. And then the last, year or so, it's just been on fire. And you can see gold has been outpacing the NASDAQ even in the last 5 years. And then here's what I mean by an economic phase transition. This chart of gold measured against the Weimar marks, so the Weimar Republic, when it was hyperinflating the marks back then, you can see how volatile it was. Gold was, a certain price in Weimar marks, and then it dropped down and it went up and down, and ultimately it hyperinflated away. And it was just extremely volatile. And if you look at something that's happening right now with Bitcoin is starting to print a chart that looks very similar to that measured against US dollars. So Bitcoin doesn't have a long history, but if you look at this chart, Bitcoin's starting to look like this measured in US dollars. And to me, this is a sign that we are looking at an economic phase transition, a transition from an older system to a newer system. And the turbulence is now being represented in the data. And I love this Luke Roman post that he put out a little while ago. He said, hey, look, there's this debasement trade. Everybody's been talking about it in the last 12 months. And, some of us have been talking about it since COVID. In US dollars, the NASDAQ is up 165%. since COVID, 102% for the S&P 500, and home prices are up in US dollars 56% since COVID. In gold, though, when you measure the same things, Nasdaq's up only 7%, the S&P 500 18%, home prices 37%. And now if you measure that in Bitcoin, in Bitcoin terms, the Nasdaq is actually down 78%. The S&P 500 is down 84%. Home prices are down 87%. So if you were storing your savings in Bitcoin, you are way ahead. You are protecting your purchasing power during this economic phase transition really early. And there's a lot of runway left, but this is the framing that really makes sense to me. And the best trends that I can identify after reading a whole bunch of reports and books and analysts and, subscribing to different things and just, checking out everything that we can. These are the big trends for the next few years, in our opinion. It's debasement of the currency. This has been going on forever, but it started really in earnest in 2008, in our opinion, with quantitative easing. Computing power, chips. This is the whole NVIDIA story. Energy to power all these data centers that are required for artificial intelligence, and then ultimately AI itself. If you can ride some of these trends through these turbulent next few years, we believe you're going to come out the other end really strong. And this is a new framework that's ultimately emerging here. So if I put this back up just so you can see this, GDP is this combination of labor growth, productivity growth, and debt growth. And this new economic system, in our opinion, is going to look much more like this. The economy is going to be a combination of energy, intelligence, and proof. And what I mean by that is that energy is going to be the cost. The cost before was like basically human labor. The cost now, the foundation, is scarce, measurable energy. You're going to have to expend energy to power the artificial intelligence that's going to be involved in every aspect of our lives. The engine is the intelligence. So the intelligence replaces the human labor as the primary driver of productivity. It scales exponentially through AI models and agents, and it transforms time into output, compressing cycles because it can work so quickly. So these two things, the cost is the energy and intelligence is the engine. These are the base of the new emerging economy, in our opinion, and proof is the guarantee. And what I mean by this is that nobody trusts central institutions anymore. I mean, no one under the age of 60 or maybe 55 or 50, somewhere around there, no one really trusts institutions. You need proof. Documents, you need proof of documents, you need proof of your money, you need proof of the signatures, proof of the media, all verified with math and cryptography. Trust in central institutions is no longer required. So the base of the system is going to be this guarantee. And Bitcoin ultimately has proof of work, so it just fits nicely in this model. And this is how we're looking at things to prepare for the next few years. And I love Jeff Booth's example of what's going on right now. He said humans don't understand exponentials very well. He always uses this example. I believe it's in his book, The Price of Tomorrow. I've kind of read it so long ago now. I forget if this example is actually in the book or if it's something he mentions all the time, but the book is a worthwhile read for sure. But he said humans understand linear progression, not exponential progression. So like we understand 1, 2, 3, 4 much better than 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. We ultimately can't keep up with the exponentials. And he uses this example saying, if we fold a piece of paper 50 times, what's the height of the paper after 50 folds? And a piece of paper is 0.1 millimeter thick. And after 10 folds, it's 102 millimeters. After 15 folds, it's 3.2 meters. Then it becomes 3.3 kilometers after 25 folds. After 35, it's 3,400 kilometers. After 45, it's 3.52 million kilometers. And after 50 folds, it's 112 million kilometers, or almost the distance to the sun. And this is exponential growth. And it's what humans really can't understand too well. And I think this phase transition is going to catch a lot of people off guard. But again, this is our opportunity if you're aware of it. The old fiat system is GDP, which is influenced by labor growth, productivity, and debt, like we've been saying. The emerging digital system, the output of the economy, is going to be influenced heavily by energy, the cost, intelligence, the engine, and proof. Proof of work, proof of identity, proof of money, proof of everything, not trust. Growth in the old system was via demographics and credit. Produce a lot of people, give them a lot of access to credit, and you grow this system. In the emerging digital system, growth is going to be via computing power and electricity. That's the base. It's completely different. The old system had trust in governments and banks. The new emerging system is verified through code and consensus. The old fiat system inflates over time, stealing our purchasing power from our savings, from our dollars, as you debase the currency. The emerging digital system deflates through efficiency. When you save in a finite digital money like Bitcoin, your purchasing power goes up over time as the cost of everything around that money deflates. The old system was fragile and centralized, as we've seen. The new system is going to be resilient and decentralized, permissionless, open, global. So that's kind of what's happening in the world. And here's a couple other points. If labor powered through the old economy, energy powers the new one. AI doesn't run on caffeine, it runs on electricity. In the old system, we needed more people. In the new system, we build smarter systems. AI is the new workforce. We don't have to trust someone to keep their word. You just check the math. Trust is built into the system. It's proven with math and cryptography. What we're experiencing right now isn't just another economic cycle. It's a phase transition. It's a monster change from an old world built on trust and debt to a new one built on energy, intelligence, and proof. So that's what's happening. And if we take my old graphic here, trying to illustrate this from the old GDP system to the new GDP system, those are the trends between those. And that's going to be very volatile as we go through this. But there is historical precedent for this. The base of the system always changes, and there's always turbulence through this, just as this illustration shows. But it's always happened for a reason. Like the economic edge of Portugal was naval dominance, and that's how it became the reserve currency. Then Spain had colonization, gold and silver flows. Then the Netherlands had banking and trade and finance, and that's how it won the status of the reserve currency. France had strong monarchy and a military. Britain had industrial revolution, an empire scale. U.S. won World War II, Bretton Woods. USD, the U.S. dollar was pegged to oil. Oil was pegged to the U.S. dollar. Denominated in the US dollar. Global debt and credit system was all based on the US dollar. These are all the advantages that these past systems had. And now we're going to emerge to this new digital system where this GDP that was based on labor, productivity, and debt is failing to generate any real growth. Debt is exploding, demographics are turning, trust in institutions is eroding. For the first time in history, the next phase transition just isn't another empire. It's not a country. It's not a central bank. It's an emergent system built on decentralized technologies, open source money, and unstoppable computing power. It's going to be a digital system that is going to be the next phase in this illustration. That's what's emerging right now. And that's why I love this beautiful illustration here, which sums up on the left the old GDP system that's breaking with a declining birth rate, with deflationary prices really being a negative, because in an inflationary system, you can't have deflation. The Ponzi collapses. A debt bomb kind of exploding. Gold and real estate were really the hard assets of choice in that system. Fiat currency was depreciating. In the middle, you have the connecting trends on this illustration. Debasement, compute, energy, and AI. You can ride any of these. You know, it seems to me the easiest one to ride is Bitcoin because it's the only one we can find that has a moat. All the other ones, you don't really know who's going to be the winner in software or computing power or even energy sources. It's really kind of difficult. But with Bitcoin, there's no other thing like it that we can find that has a moat around it that's a global monetary network with a finite amount of an asset that's riding on that network, Bitcoin. And then you have it permissionless, anyone can play, and it's secure. So this to us seems like the best way to ride this turbulent next few years. And then ultimately the emergent new system. And the way we're defining it right now is the pillars of it are going to be energy, intelligence, and proof. So this is where we're headed. This is all of our opportunity. If you feel like you're paying attention, or if you feel like the system's crumbling around you and you pay attention, you can see the opportunity in front of us right now is huge. These trends are going to be massive, and no one's really paying attention to them. Everyone's just trying to, survive, and who can blame them? But if you really are paying attention and you can grab onto some of these trends early, the emergent new system is going to be something you're really going to enjoy. So that's it. That's something to think about. Hopefully you found that useful.